Grace, you can't expect us to show up at your wedding and embarrass the Chen family like this. Marrying a software developer is a disgrace to everything we've built. My mother's words rang out across the silent kitchen, my father nodding gravely beside her. This was less than a week before my wedding day, a day I'd dreamed of since childhood. I wish I could say I was surprised. Our family was one of the most prominent names in Los Angeles' Chinese American community. My parents, Dr. Samuel Chen and Linda Chen, built a hospital empire worth over $600 million. We were the perfect immigrant success story. The right schools, the right address, charity, gala, invitations, and headlines in local magazines. But perfection always comes at a cost. And no one knows that cost more than the eldest daughter who never fit the mold. When I announced I was marrying Alex Park, a nobody in their eyes, it was as if I'd set fire to everything they'd worked for. Not only did they refuse to walk me down the aisle, they went a step further. My mother started a private family group chat, for real relatives only, where every decision and mistake of mine was dissected, laughed at, and shared as cautionary tales with our extended family from Pasadena to Hong Kong. My father told the head of our community association, Grace has always been the stubborn one. She'll come around when she realizes she's made the biggest mistake of her life. But what my parents didn't know and what I never revealed to anyone was that I'd been preparing for this moment for a long time. I'd been collecting every voice message, every screenshot, every passive-aggressive text, because I'd learned one brutal lesson. In my family, love was transactional, loyalty was conditional, and reputation was everything. One day soon, the same people who were so ashamed of me would find themselves begging for my forgiveness, as the entire community turned its back on them. But how did we get here? Why would a daughter so desperately want to separate from the very people who gave her life? And what could possibly happen to turn the tables so completely that my parents, the untouchable Chens, would become pariahs overnight? This is my story, and every detail matters. Trust me, I'll get to the moment when everything unraveled. But you need to understand what led up to it. My name is Dr. Grace Chen. I'm 33 years old, an attending physician in internal medicine, living in Pasadena, California. I am the firstborn child of Samuel and Linda Chen, immigrants from Hong Kong who turned a single urgent care clinic into a hospital empire. To the outside world, my life seemed pristine, a perfect row of academic trophies, medical degrees, and photos from charity galas. But my private world was defined by one thing never being enough. Growing up in the Chen family meant living with an unspoken scoreboard. My younger brother, Daniel, was the golden child. He was praised for the smallest accomplishment, getting a B+ in chemistry, scoring a single goal in soccer, while my straight A's and piano recitals were expected. When I was accepted into Stanford Medical School, my mother's first response was, "That's nice. But remember, Daniel will need help with his science classes. You should tutor him." The message was always clear: Daniel needed my time, my patience, my resources, while my own milestones faded quietly into the background. Looking back, my earliest memories are tinged with a kind of lonely responsibility. On my 14th birthday, my parents forgot to come home until almost midnight, caught up at a fundraising dinner. On Daniel's 16th, they rented out an entire restaurant and gifted him a brand new Tesla. My reward for getting into Stanford was a practical suitcase and a warning to make the family proud. When it came to money, the rules were just as lopsided. Daniel's college fund was topped up every year, but mine was always tight due to family investments. I spent summers working at the hospital as a volunteer while Daniel flew off to Europe on networking trips. My parents' pride in him was bottomless. Meanwhile, I felt like a shadow moving through my own house, useful only for my reliability and silence. Our family's reputation in the local Chinese American community was everything. Every Sunday, there were endless dinners with aunties and uncles, most of them not even related by blood, where the latest gossip was traded like currency. My mother was the queen of these circles, orchestrating charity drives and WeChat groups, always careful to maintain the Chen image. People are watching. Grace, don't embarrass us, she'd whisper before every public event, as if I were always on the verge of ruining their plans. But nothing made the invisible wall between me and my family more obvious than my choice of profession and my refusal to play by their rules. Medicine was respected. But, to my parents, my job was just another box to tick on a resume. What really mattered was who I would marry. A good daughter finds a successful husband and brings honor to her family, my mother loved to say, usually while showing me photos of eligible surgeons and entrepreneurs' sons at Lunar New Year parties. I was 27 when I first realized I was truly on my own. Daniel's startup had failed spectacularly, burning through $200,000 money my parents borrowed from my savings, promising to repay me. They never did. My mother's excuse was always the same: family helps family. Grace, one day Daniel will do something great, and we'll all be proud. At every step, my parents made it clear that their love and support came with strings attached. I learned not to ask for help. I paid my own rent through medical school, covered every textbook and meal, while Daniel lived in a penthouse with rent covered by our parents' investment in his potential. When my mother organized a celebration for my cousin's engagement, I was asked to work the event, not attend as a guest. Still, I kept hoping for recognition, for some sign that I mattered. I worked longer shifts, volunteered for the toughest patients, sent money home when Daniel needed it. Each time, I told myself maybe this would be enough. It never was. All these years, the pattern repeated, my accomplishments ignored, my sacrifices invisible, my loyalty unreturned. So when I met Alex Park, a man my parents instantly dismissed as beneath us, I understood, with a cold clarity, that love in my family was conditional, and that the only way out was through. But I never imagined just how far they would go to break me or how far I would go to set myself free. If you ask anyone at my hospital about me, they'd say I'm reliable to a fault. Always the last to leave, the first to step in when things go wrong. I'd like to believe I learned that kind of strength on my own. But the truth is, my family forced me to become this way by teaching me that, in the Chen household, love had to be earned through sacrifice. And even then, it could be taken away at any moment. 2 years ago, Daniel's second tech startup failed, this time leaving him with $200,000 in debt. He called me late at night, his voice trembling. Grace, if I don't pay them back, they'll ruin my name. And the family's name too. Mom says you have some savings from your hospital shifts. Can you help me? I wired him every penny I'd saved for my own condo down payment, telling myself, as always, that family came first. The next week, my parents organized a banquet at a luxury restaurant to support Daniel during his difficult time. I wasn't invited. Instead, my mother texted me a list of errands and reminded me not to wear scrubs if I happened to stop by, because nobody wants to see a tired doctor in family photos. Later that night, I saw pictures of the celebration posted everywhere on WeChat. Daniel smiling in a designer suit. My parents beaming beside him. My name wasn't mentioned once. That was the beginning of a year of silence. If I messaged the family chat, no one replied. My calls went straight to voicemail. I started noticing that my mother had created a new group chat without me in it where wedding plans, business ventures, and family holidays were now discussed. Daniel's new girlfriend, Rachel, a social media influencer from Beverly Hills, was added to the group before I was even told they were dating. At dinner with my parents, Rachel once said, "It must be hard for Grace to keep up. Not everyone is cut out for this kind of life." My mother laughed, agreeing. She's always been more comfortable with her patients than with people. Looking back, I know exactly when the final line was drawn. When I introduced Alex Park to my family, my parents didn't even try to hide their disdain. We'd only been dating 6 months. But he was already my anchor, calm, brilliant, gentle, and quietly ambitious. He was finishing his postdoc at Stanford and quietly building a health tech app he refused to brag about. At our first dinner, my father asked him, "So, Alex, what kind of money does a professor make? Is it enough for our Grace to keep living like she does?" Alex smiled and answered with humility, "I'm building something bigger than a salary." Sire? My mother pursed her lips. Dreams are nice, but Grace deserves more. After that night, the attacks grew sharper. My mother started forwarding me articles about the dangers of marrying beneath your class. My father sent job postings for wealth management consultants, subtle hints that maybe Alex should upgrade his prospects. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself that their judgment couldn't hurt me anymore. But each time I thought I'd grown immune, they found a new way to wound. When Alex proposed, it was in the most unassuming, perfect way, a sunrise hike in Griffith Park. Just the two of us. The city still asleep below. I told my parents that evening, over dinner, hoping for a shred of happiness. My mother put down her fork. "Are you really so desperate to leave us that you'd settle for this?" My father's only response, "If you go through with this, don't expect us to be there." After that night, everything escalated. My mother started messaging family, friends, and distant relatives, explaining in careful, dramatic detail that Grace is making a choice we can't support. My aunts stopped returning my calls. Daniel's wedding announcement to Rachel, now with her own following of 500,000, became the center of every family conversation. While my engagement was ignored, the Chen family WeChat was flooded with praise for Daniel, with not a single mention of me or Alex. Then, my parents went further. They unfollowed me on Facebook and Instagram. My mother removed my photo from her profile collage, replacing it with Daniel's engagement portrait. She started telling people at church, "Grace is just too busy to join us these days. You know how it is when children make their own choices. We have to let them learn the hard way." I began to realize that my parents' love had always been conditional. It depended on me staying small, quiet, and useful. The moment I chose happiness on my own terms, I became disposable. But what they didn't know was that every time they hurt me, they made me stronger. I kept every email, every message, every veiled threat. I built my own circle of friends, colleagues, and chosen family. And in the quiet moments late at night, alone in my apartment, I promised myself that I would never again let anyone decide my worth for me. What happened next would make my parents regret every cold shoulder and every insult. They thought they could erase me from their world. Instead, they set the stage for their own public downfall. There are certain moments in life when you know exactly where you stand with the people who raised you. My wedding day was one of those moments, a line in the sand, drawn in permanent ink. There were no last-minute apologies, no dramatic dashes down the aisle from my parents. Instead, there was silence, the kind that echoes, the kind that answers every childhood question I'd ever asked about my place in the Chen family. Alex and I planned our wedding ourselves. We chose a sun-drenched rooftop in downtown Los Angeles, with friends from medical school and his old colleagues at Stanford. My parents' absence was conspicuous, 2 empty chairs at the front, left for them out of both hope and principle. There was no tea ceremony, no red envelopes, none of the traditions that would have signified approval from my family. Just laughter, dancing, and the warmth of people who actually wanted to see us happy. But even from a distance, my family made their presence known. On the morning of my wedding, I woke up to screenshots from a family group chat. I'd been excluded from where my mother posted. Today is a difficult day for our family. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to teach children to value what matters. An aunt chimed in. Daniel's wedding next month will be a real celebration, the kind our ancestors would be proud of. Daniel's fiancée Rachel shared photos from their engagement shoot, every image staged and flawless. The message was clear. My wedding was not just unacknowledged, it was actively overshadowed. But something extraordinary happened. One of my best friends, Lily herself, the daughter of immigrant parents who disapproved of her life choices, suggested we live stream our ceremony. Why not let people see the real you, she said. Let them witness joy that doesn't require permission. I agreed, a little nervously. Within minutes of going live on TikTok and YouTube, hundreds of people tuned in, strangers, former classmates, even a local Chinese-American journalist, curious about the controversial wedding of Dr. Grace Chen. What started as a small act of defiance quickly became something larger. Comments flooded in, "I wish I had your courage. Your happiness matters more than tradition." The hashtag Break the Mold began trending, as other children of immigrants shared their own stories of conditional love and impossible standards. By the end of the night, our wedding had been viewed by over 200,000 people, with messages of support coming from as far away as London and Singapore. Alex held me close on the dance floor, whispering, "You did it. You made your own family." For the first time, I believed him. Yet beneath the joy, a small ache lingered. There was no call from my mother, no note from my father. I caught myself glancing at the empty chairs again and again. But I also noticed something new: freedom. For the first time, my life belonged to me. I wasn't performing. I wasn't shrinking. I was simply living. Still, the story doesn't end there. Because what neither my parents nor the rest of the world knew was that Alex's quiet confidence was built on more than just dreams. And soon, their attempts to shame me would backfire spectacularly, exposing the very hypocrisy they'd worked so hard to hide. But I'll get to that soon. This part is important. If there's one thing my parents never expected, it was that Alex, the man they dismissed as just a software developer, was hiding a story far bigger than any of us let on. You see, Alex wasn't just a postdoc from Stanford. For years, he'd worked quietly, building a health tech app designed to help immigrant communities access quality healthcare in their native languages. What he never shared with my family or even with most of our friends was just how successful that project had become. It started with a news alert on my phone. Exactly 1 week after our wedding, Stanford alum raises over $80 million for AI health platform. Alex's face stared up from the cover of Forbes Asia. Then CNBC. Then TechCrunch. Overnight. My inbox exploded. Messages poured in from old classmates, colleagues, and even my childhood piano teacher. Is this your husband? Why didn't you say anything? How did you keep this a secret? The world, it seemed, had discovered Alex Park. But in our home, nothing changed. Alex still woke up at dawn, made strong coffee, and drove me to early hospital shifts. He still called his parents in Seoul every Sunday. And he still never mentioned money unless he was donating it to a free clinic or scholarship fund. But for my family, the revelation was seismic. Suddenly, all the things they valued, success, prestige, the right kind of recognition, were attached to the very man they had spent months shaming and rejecting. The same community aunties who'd gossiped about my poor choices now filled my mother's phone with breathless questions. Did you know? Will you be invited to the launch gala? My father's hospital board asked if he could arrange a meeting with Alex's company. Daniel, sensing an opportunity, messaged me for the first time in months. Maybe you could help me pitch an idea to Alex's investors. The twist didn't end there. Within days, a video went viral, footage of a community charity event where my mother was cornered by a young journalist. Dr. Shen, what do you think of your son-in-law's achievements? The reporter asked. Microphone poised. My mother, caught off guard, stammered. Our family has always supported Grace, in our own way. The clip spread like wildfire, reaching millions across social media platforms. The comment sections were brutal. Now they want to claim her. Typical now that he's rich. Suddenly, he's family. Shame on the Chens. Every attempt my parents made to control the narrative backfired. Screenshots from their private group chat shared by a sympathetic cousin began circulating online. People saw the real story, the shame, the insults, the careful campaign to erase me. My parents' social media pages were flooded with comments demanding an apology. Meanwhile, the hospital foundation where my parents sat on the board started receiving emails from supporters, patients, and donors. How can you preach compassion and inclusion when you've treated your own daughter this way? Local news outlets picked up the story. And even national media weighed in on the viral wedding that challenged tradition and family loyalty. Through it all, Alex stayed silent, letting the facts speak for themselves. He never gloated, never called out my family directly. Instead, he simply supported me, reminding me again and again, this isn't about revenge. It's about living free. But what no one else knew was that I was quietly gathering evidence too. Every hurtful message, every exclusion, every legal document I'd signed to lend Daniel money, every paper trail, every bank statement, every voice note. It wasn't just for me, it was for the day I would finally confront my family with the truth. And the world would see them as they really were. The ultimate twist, my parents had spent their entire lives building a reputation only to destroy it themselves. Brick by brick. With their own words. And I was just getting started. After Alex's success became public, my parents shifted almost overnight from icy silence to forced reconciliation. But I wasn't naive. Their sudden forgiveness was just a mask for desperation. The hospital empire they'd built, valued at over $600 million, was now facing public scrutiny, declining donations, and a wave of negative press. Patients wrote letters questioning the ethics of leaders who could disown their own daughter. Hospital staff whispered about hypocrisy in board meetings. In a community where reputation was everything, the Chens were bleeding trust. That's when my parents reached out. It started with a carefully worded email, Grace. We would like to sit down and discuss how we can move forward as a family. Perhaps there are ways Alex's company could benefit from a partnership with our hospital. As if they hadn't erased me just weeks earlier. As if money and appearances could patch over years of neglect. Alex and I met them at a downtown law office, neutral territory. With our attorneys present. I'd prepared a folder. Thick with evidence, bank transfers to Daniel. Screenshots of group chats where I'd been humiliated. Emails from my parents detailing every condition they'd put on their support. As we sat across from each other, the lawyer pressed record on the meeting. For once, I spoke calmly and without apology. You made it clear, in writing and in person, that I was not your daughter unless I lived by your rules. You used my money, my silence, my achievements, but never my name. Now that the world knows Alex's value, you want to rewrite history. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for closure. My father shifted in his seat, his face tight. My mother fidgeted with her designer scarf, eyes flickering. Grace. Families argue. We all say things we don't mean. She began, voice trembling just enough to be believable. But look at what you've built with Alex. Imagine what we could accomplish together. For the hospital. For the community. People are watching us. I handed over the folder. People are watching. I agreed. That's why we'll be ending all financial ties. You'll repay the $200,000 loan to Daniel. Plus interest. All communication regarding business will go through our legal teams. If you attempt to use Alex's name, or mine, for PR or fundraising, you'll receive a cease and desist. The silence in the room was deafening. My attorney summarized the terms: repayment schedule. No contact outside legal matters. Strict use of our names and images. Alex spoke up. Voice gentle but unyielding. This isn't personal. This is about boundaries. About truth. Over the next few weeks, my parents scrambled. Their hospital's social media team took down posts about family values. Daniel deleted half his public videos. And Rachel's influencer partnerships evaporated. My mother issued a lukewarm clarification about misunderstandings in the press, which only fueled the backlash. Community leaders distanced themselves from the Chens, and major donors shifted support to organizations that promoted true inclusion. But the most satisfying moments came quietly. I received legal confirmation of the loan repayment, with interest, wired directly into my account. My mother sent an email through her lawyer requesting permission to use a photo of Alex for a grant proposal. We declined. And, most meaningful of all, I heard from hundreds of people, strangers who had watched our wedding, colleagues who'd faced similar family betrayal, young women who said, "You showed me it's possible to say no, even when it costs everything." My quiet revenge was complete, not through screaming matches or public takedowns, but by reclaiming control of my life, my story, and my worth. Still, one more reckoning was on the horizon. Because what happens when a family built on appearance and status loses both? That was about to be revealed. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The Chens, once the picture of immigrant achievement and philanthropic respect, found themselves isolated. Charity event invitations vanished. The hospital's annual gala, a staple of the Los Angeles social calendar, was suddenly sparsely attended. The donations that once poured in for family legacy programs dried up. It wasn't just the gossip in WeChat groups and church circles. Even national news outlets ran stories about the viral wedding that exposed the hidden cost of family reputation. My parents tried every damage control tactic they knew. My mother, once the darling of community charities, was forced to resign from the board of a major foundation after members circulated screenshots of her disparaging messages about me. My father's hospital board demanded an independent review of financial and HR practices, leading to uncomfortable questions about how Daniel's failed startups had been bankrolled. Rachel, Daniel's fiancée, lost multiple sponsorships as old videos resurfaced, painting her as complicit in the family's social media attacks against me. Daniel was finally compelled to release a public apology on his own channel. His voice shook as he admitted to lying about his entrepreneurial success and to borrowing money that he'd never paid back. I let my pride and my family's expectations lead me down a path I regret. I want to apologize publicly to my sister, Dr. Grace Chin, for everything. It went viral more for its rawness than for its remorse. The comments were brutal, but some people expressed hope that maybe this was the start of real change. I didn't celebrate the collapse of their status, but I did feel relief. The cycle had finally broken. I had not destroyed my family, they had done it themselves. Piece by piece. By refusing to see me as more than an accessory to their image. But out of the ashes of public disgrace, something new was born. After the TEDx organizers reached out, I stood on a red-carpeted stage and shared my story with a packed room and tens of thousands watching online, why I cut off my family for good. I spoke about the danger of confusing love with obligation, of building an identity on someone else's approval, and of the freedom that comes with drawing your own boundaries. The video racked up millions of views, especially among first-generation Americans, women in medicine, and children of strict parents worldwide. I started receiving letters from people who'd watched the story unfold: young doctors, startup founders, even other daughters who had been cast out for making their own choices. Their stories echoed my own, working twice as hard for half the praise, sacrificing everything for families that only saw their worth in what they could provide. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. Alex and I leaned into this new chapter. He became a mentor for immigrant-led startups, using his own story of rejection and quiet triumph as inspiration. I launched a support network for women in healthcare, many of whom were fighting silent battles against both workplace discrimination and family expectation. We made a home for ourselves not just with each other, but with the community we built around truth and acceptance. Still, I sometimes wondered, did I go too far? Did my pursuit of justice tip over into vengeance? Or did I simply deliver the consequences my parents had earned over a lifetime of manipulation? Those are questions I may never fully answer. But I know this: I am finally at peace with who I am and the family I have chosen. And one final chapter remained. These days, when people ask me about my family, I no longer hesitate or stumble over words. I tell the truth. I say that I am the daughter of Samuel and Linda Chen, and also the sister of Daniel, but that I have built a life without them in it. My story is no longer defined by their approval, or lack of it. I am Dr. Grace Chen, and I chose to step out of their shadow. Alex and I have carved out a new existence, one filled with the kind of love and safety I once thought belonged only in other people's stories. Our days are simple early morning coffees, planning new projects for Alex's growing health tech foundation, late night walks in our neighborhood, and long dinners with friends who have become family by choice, not by blood. My professional life has flourished in ways I could never have imagined. The support network I started for women in healthcare is thriving. We offer legal workshops, mental health counseling, and a mentorship program for young doctors whose own families don't support their dreams. The letters I receive from young women around the country telling me they left toxic homes, stood up to impossible standards, or simply learned to set boundaries, remind me that one act of courage can ripple outward, changing lives I'll never even meet. As for my parents, I hear little from them now. Our agreement, brokered by lawyers and protected by documentation, is respected. Daniel is trying to rebuild his own reputation, slowly and quietly. My mother has retreated from public life. My father rarely leaves his office. Every so often, I wonder if they ever think of me with anything but regret. But I have learned that some questions are better left unanswered. If you had asked me years ago, I would have said that family was the people who shared your blood. Now, I know better. Family is the people who show up when you need them, who celebrate your victories and mourn your losses, who remind you that you are enough as you are. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to walk away from the people who refuse to see your worth. I close this chapter with a sense of peace. My story is not about revenge, or even victory. It is about freedom. The freedom to define myself, to choose my community, and to live honestly. Maybe you're listening to this and thinking of your own family. Maybe you've felt that ache of being left out, dismissed, or belittled by the people who should have loved you most. If so, know this: you are not alone. You do not have to carry their shame. You have the right to build something better for yourself, for your future, for everyone who will follow in your footsteps. Have you ever been betrayed or shut out by your own family? Did you fight to earn their love? Or did you choose to walk away? Tell me your story in the comments. If you're comfortable, share your victories, your heartbreaks, your own definitions of family. Let's help each other find the courage to break the mold. And remember, the life you build for yourself is worth more than anyone else's approval.